Good morning, Watershed. I'm excited to be with you this morning. It is a big morning as kids are ready to start school. Teachers have already been working and preparing for them, and a lot of great and exciting things going on. And we're starting a new series this morning. I'm calling the series Ground Rules. We're going to be talking about ground rules. Now, you may be thinking, you hear that, and most of us, when we hear the word rules, our automatic response is, you know, we don't like that. We don't want to hear about rules. It's just such a negative thing. We hate rules, except when other people break them, right? Except, I mean, you know, like the guy at the grocery store or at Target or at Walmart or whatever who's dropped someone off to go inside and shop, and I'm not talking about that person's coming out and they pull up and wait for just a minute or two. I'm talking they sit there the entire time while the other person, there's 150 parking spaces in here. Or if you wanted to, you could just drive your car around in circles a little bit. But no, you're more important than all the rest of us, so you've got to sit right here in front of the front door where everybody else has to deal with you. You know, those kind of folks, that's when we really like rules. When other people break them and when they get on, and we really get a kick out of it. We really get a kick out of it when people get called on their rule breaking like this. So none of us likes rules. None of us likes rules, but you know what we like even less than rules? The self-entitled jerks who act like the rules don't apply to them. The folks who cut us off in traffic. Tomorrow morning in that car rider line. That van that pulls in front of you. So we don't like rules, but at the same time we do. We depend on them. It's how our society functions. C.S. Lewis, in his great masterpiece, Mere Christianity, started off talking about this innate sense of right and wrong, this rules that we know we need in order for life to work. He said it this way, he said, everyone has heard people quarreling. Sometimes it sounds funny and sometimes it sounds merely unpleasant, but however it sounds, I believe we can learn something very important from listening to the kind of things people say. They say things like this: how'd you like it if anyone did the same to you? That's my seat. I was there first. Leave him alone. He isn't doing you any harm. Why should you shove in first? Give me a bit of your orange. I gave you a bit of mine. Come on, you promised. People say things like this every day, educated people as well as uneducated, and children as well as grown-ups. Now, what interests me about all these remarks is that the man who makes them is not merely saying the other man's behavior does not happen to please him. He is appealing to some kind of standard of behavior which he expects the other man to know about. The other man very seldom replies, "To hell with your standard." Nearly always he tries to make out that what he has been doing does not really go against the standard, or that if it does, there is some special excuse. He pretends that there is some special reason in this particular case why the person who took the seat first should not keep it, or that things were quite different when he was given the bit of orange, or that something has turned up which lets him off keeping his promise. In fact, very much looks like both parties have in mind a kind of law or a rule of fair play or decent behavior or morality or whatever you like to call it, about which they really agree. And they have. If they had not, they might, of course, fought like animals, but they could not quarrel in the human sense of the word. Quarreling means trying to show that the other man is wrong. And it would make no sense in trying to do that unless you and that other person had some sort of agreement as to what right and wrong are, just as there would be no sense in saying that a footballer had committed a foul unless there was some agreement about the rules of football. So we do have rules. We do have laws in our lives. We have these rules that we need to live by, the sense of right and wrong that seems innate to all of us. And here at the Watershed, we have some rules that we try to live by. We've been talking about our destination. We want to be a group of people who shed God's love to inspire Christ-centered living. We've talked about the ways we want to get there by worship, by putting God first, by deepening our knowledge and understanding of God, and by deepening our relationships with each other, and by making a difference in the world. But as we're doing those things, it's important that we have a set of rules, a set of ground rules that we follow as we pursue that goal. Those set of ground rules are our core values here at the Watershed. Things that we say are very, very important, and things that we say will drive our decisions and the things that we do or do not do as a church. They're posted right as you go out into the gathering here, right above the coffee wall there. You see them posted there and a little bit about each one of them. And I'm going to spend the next few weeks talking about all those. And today, I want to talk about one that I'm choosing this one first because I think it is one of the most important. I think it is vitally important that we remember this rule and that it always drives who we are and what we do as a community of faith. And that is our value of to be a church that is pursuing. A church that is pursuing. Now, you hear that at first, and you may wonder, what does that mean? Well, that's why we've added some explanations to talk about a little bit. But the main thing that we mean when we say we want to be a church that is always pursuing is that we want to be a church that always has an eye toward the people who are not here yet. The people who are not here yet. And as we wrap our minds and our hearts around this value, this commitment, this core value that we have, I want to spend some time in one of my favorite chapters of the Bible. It's the 15th chapter of the Gospel of Luke. And in this chapter, Jesus tells a series of parables that are all very similar in terms of the storyline, and that I think really speak to this value and this commitment to be a church that is always pursuing, that is always interested, and always has an eye to who is not here yet. I begin in Luke 15, verse 1. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then Jesus told them this parable. "Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and he says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep.' I tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent." And so Jesus is teaching, and there's tax collectors and sinners. Tax collectors and sinners. That's the biblical term for those kind of people, right? Those kind of people are gathering around to hear Jesus. They are coming. And there's another group that talks about the Pharisees and the Sadducees. You know who the Pharisees and the Sadducees are? Good church folk, right? So those people were gathered around listening to Jesus, and the good church folk started grumbling. And the good church folk said, "He hangs out with those kinds of people." And to address this complaint from the good church folk, Jesus told them a story. Told them a series of stories. The first one, he tells the story of a shepherd who has 100 sheep on the hillside. One of them goes missing. And he says, "What do you think? Will he not leave the 99 and leave the 99 in the open country and go search for the one?" And I love Luke. I love Luke's telling this parable. This parable appears also in the Gospel of Matthew. There's one word difference. Luke adds the word until. Until. In other words, the shepherd won't give up. He looks for that sheep until he finds it. But I'm going to stop you right there. Because if you were sitting in the crowd that day, at that moment, if you knew anything about shepherding, you would probably say, "No! No fool shepherd does that." Think about it, folks. Think about it. 99 to 1. The one is more important than all of these 99 over here. The shepherd's going to leave the 99 alone in the open field where they are open to threats and other things coming in and hurting them, and bad things can happen while the shepherd's gone. The shepherd's just going to leave those 99 and go? No, shepherds would not do that. Shepherds wouldn't do that. They might take the sheep somewhere where they've got a sheepfold or a pen, and they can close up the 99 and get them all safe and secure, and might go and find some other shepherds to come and help them, some hired hands to come and help them and watch these 99. You take care of these. I'm going to go look for this one. That's not what Jesus says the shepherd does. Jesus says the shepherd leaves the 99. Leaves the 99. The 99 who are doing what they're supposed to do. The 99 who are listening to the shepherd. The 99 who are where they are supposed to be. The 99 good church folk. The shepherd leaves them. Says, "You take care of yourself for a bit. You can handle this. You got this. I've got something more important." And the shepherd goes and looks for the one lost sheep until he finds it. And when he finds it, Jesus says, he puts it over his shoulders. He comes back home. He calls his friends together, and he rejoices that the sheep who was lost and is now see, God has a different kind of economy than you and I do. None of us would risk 99 for the sake of one. None of us would do that. It makes no sense whatsoever. It'd be nice to have a nice round figure and have 100, but 99 is better than nothing. No. Jesus, in addressing the attitudes of the Pharisees and Sadducees, who couldn't stand that he was spending time with sinners and outsiders and outcasts and those kinds of people, said, you know what? I'd leave 99 of you folks to go look for one of them. Any day. Any day. He doesn't stop there. He goes on to say, or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin. In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of angels of God over one sinner who repents. So now Jesus is saying, me or God is like a woman who had 10 coins. And she went to check her coin purse, and there were only 9 there. We all know that feeling, right? I know it was there. I know they were there. We all know that feeling. We know kind of that panic and that instant you start looking, but she doesn't. She turns her house upside down, and she won't quit until she finds it. She doesn't give up. She goes looking for that lost coin. And then what does she do when she finds the lost coin? I mean, this story almost mirrors the first one exactly. You know, just substitute shepherd and sheep for woman and coins, right? So the woman looks for the coin, she finds it, she calls her friends, and she calls them together, the text says, to rejoice. She throws a party over this coin that she had lost and she now found. How much do you think that party cost? Probably cost a couple coins at least, right? Think about it. She turned her house upside down looking for the lost coin. She was so excited that she found it. She threw a party, and she comes out with less than she had in the first place. Right? Listen. Jesus is trying to give you and me a glimpse into the mind and the heart of God. This is what God is like, Jesus is saying. He's like a shepherd who will leave 99 sheep to go looking for the one. He's like a woman who will turn her house upside down looking for a lost coin and then throw a party that'll spend that coin and more to celebrate. And just in case you're not sure that Jesus is trying to give us a look into the heart of God, he then adds, after each of them, there is more rejoicing in heaven. There is more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner, over one person who was separated from God and has been reunited, over one sinner who repents, over one person who is heading away from God and who turns around and comes back to God. There's more rejoicing in heaven, Jesus said, over that one person than over the 99 people who are already good with God. This is what excites the heart of God, Jesus is telling us. When outsiders, when the lost, when people who for whatever reason find themselves estranged from God. And listen, folks, if you've never felt that, count yourself lucky and blessed. You are beyond blessed if you've never really known what it's like to be estranged from God. you grew up in church and you always had a good experience and never had a reason to go away from it, and it's always been there for you, and God has always been there for you, and you've always had this deep and abiding trust in God and this deep and abiding understanding that he loves you and that you are precious to him, and this deep and abiding faith, if you've always had that, then you are blessed. That is not what most people experience in life. Because you see, there are so many things that can cause us to become estranged from God. People get hurt by the church. It happens all the time. I've been doing this for over a quarter century. I have seen it more than I care to admit. People get hurt by the church, and it drives them away from God. Or people get told a lie and they're convinced that there are other things that are better, that are more important. And they fall for that lie. And before they know it, whatever the reason, before people know it, they find themselves estranged from God. And either they're angry at God, and resent him, or they feel unworthy. God can't love me. God can't forgive me. And people are estranged from God. And Jesus says, when one of those kinds of people is found and brought back home where they belong, heaven erupts with joy and with a party. God has an eye always toward those who are not here yet. God is a pursuing God. Jesus continued. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." Let me just stop and explain for a moment. In this culture, in this world, in this day, in this time, a father has 2 sons, then they have a right to his inheritance. And the way it worked, the older son gets a double portion. So essentially, everything the father owns upon his death, didn't have wills and those kinds of things. It was just understood. It went to your sons. Sorry, ladies. This is the world that they lived in. It was just understood. You have 2 sons, then everything you have is divided into 3 portions. The older son gets 2 of them. The younger son gets 1 of them. Right? So that's what the younger son is asking for. Give me my share of the estate. Give me my third. Make no mistake. What the son is saying, I can't wait until you die. I wish you were dead. Let's pretend you are and go on and give me mine here. This is what the son is saying to his father. This is the gall and the nerve of this young man. So what does the father do? He divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had. He set off for a distant country and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods of the pig that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. And I just want to highlight here real quick for you. Remember, this is Jesus, a Jewish rabbi. Remember, he's speaking primarily here to Pharisees and Sadducees, leaders of the Jewish people. He is showing them a sign. The basic assumption of all of them is that every character in the story will be Jewish like them. and by having this young Jewish man go off and squander his inheritance to a point that he has to feed pigs is a sign of just how far away from his Father he's gone. He's gone to a Gentile land and squandered his wealth among Gentiles. And now he's feeding the filthy, unclean, non-kosher animals of the Gentiles. And he'd be happy to eat what the pigs are eating. He's in such a bad state. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and he went to his father." Folks, that is the most beautiful picture of repentance you will ever find. It's not about feeling bad. It's not about feeling guilty. It's about coming to your senses and turning around and going in the different direction. It's about going back home. My life has been heading this way, and it has landed me among the pigs. I'm going to turn around, and I'm going to go back home. And he doesn't go back home so that things will be like they were. He just recognizes that his father treats his servants better than his current master is treating him. So I'll go work for my father, and at least I will be better taken care of. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, "Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to his servants, the father isn't even interested in his apology. Doesn't care. He knows he feels bad for what he's done. He knows he feels sorry. He cares that he's turned around and come back. That's what the father cares about. But the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. This is one of Jesus' most well-known and well-liked and loved parables. Even folks who aren't necessarily familiar with the Bible have probably heard this story in one version or another. It's Jesus' parable of what? The prodigal son. The parable of the prodigal son. You know what the word prodigal means? No, it's just the word that we use for this story, right? A prodigal is one who doesn't follow the rules, now that we're talking about rules. A prodigal is someone who does not behave in a manner that as he or she is expected to behave by societal standards. That's a prodigal. A rule breaker, a misbehavior, someone who doesn't do what is expected of them. I only have one question in these three stories that all seem so very similar. Who's the real prodigal? I think a shepherd who ignores 99 sheep for the sake of one is a prodigal. I think a woman who tears up her house and then throws a party and wastes what she was looking for in the first place is a prodigal. I think a father whose son comes to him and says, "I wish you were dead. Why don't you give me my inheritance now?" who does anything other than slap him in the face is a prodigal. And understand, in the world in which Jesus lived, a wealthy man, who this gentleman in the story clearly is, he has an estate to divide between his sons. There are certain rules of decorum that are expected of people like this. Number one, they don't run. They generally wore a type of tunic that was kind of tight wrapping. It had been very difficult. In order to run, he would have had to hike up his clothes. He had to pull them up. This was unseemly. This was unbecoming. Proper gentlemen do not behave this way. And a son who has treated him this way, you're lucky if you get to become one of his servants. You certainly don't. Put the ring back on. You know what that means? Put the ring back on his finger. The moment he did that, he was saying, you're not my servant, you're my son. Because having the ring with the family's crest and the family's mark on it meant you had the authority of the father. You've seen those old-fashioned letters sealed with wax, and they put a little mark in it to show, to authenticate, this is really from the person who it claims to be from. That's what that ring means. The Father's saying, you can speak on my behalf. You're mine. He puts fine clothes on him, and he kills this fattened calf, his best calf that he's been saving, and he throws this great party for him. It is the Father. Yes, the Son is prodigal. Absolutely. But the Father is a prodigal in this story as well. He's a prodigal because he lets the Son have what he wants. He's a prodigal because he doesn't force his Son to sleep in the bed that he's made. He's a prodigal because he welcomes his Son and embraces him and welcomes him home again. Make no mistake. Jesus says it 3 times. When Jesus repeats something, I learned this in seminary. When Jesus repeats something, it means you better listen. When he says it 3 times, you really better listen. Folks, you really better listen. He tells 3 virtually identical stories. The point of all of them is to let you and me know that God is always pursuing. God is always looking for the outsider. God is always looking for those who are estranged from him. Meanwhile, back at the ranch. Verse 25. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. I have seen that happen in churches so many times. He refused to go in, so his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, how does he know what the son has done? He has no idea what his brother did. He has no clue. But he can sure spin a good story. When he comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you're always with me and everything I have is yours. Literally true, by the way. Right? Everything that's left is his. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and he is found. Like I said, I've been doing this for more than 25 years. I've worked in rural, and I mean rural, churches. Rural. That's how we say it. That's how we say it in Mississippi where I'm from. Rural. I've worked in rural churches. I've worked in small towns. I've worked in county seats. I've worked in suburban churches. I've worked in urban churches. I've worked in every setting you can imagine among all kinds of different people. And I want to tell you that the biggest problem the church today is facing. The reason that churches are struggling, it's not because of what style of worship they choose to employ. It's not because of what kind of staff they hire or what kind of pastor they have or don't have. It's not because of what kind of building and facilities they have or they don't have. It's not about any of those things. The reason many churches are dying is because they have quit pursuing. Most churches are far too busy caring about the people who are here than to ever give a second thought to the people who aren't. And they spend their time fighting over keeping the people who are here happy. This group isn't happy, so we've got to change that. That group isn't happy, so we're going to change this. We change this to make them happy, to upset them. We're all worried about who's going to be upset if we do this, that, or the other. Churches are incredibly good at navel gazing. And I believe, and I am convinced, that when churches care more about us than we do about them, in fact, when there is such a thing as us and them, and the church fails to see that we're all us. And that's why we want those who are not here already. Because they're not them, they're us. And so we want them here with us. When churches lose sight of that, they're dying. Period. Full stop. End of story. We believe that we should be a church that is pursuing. The decisions that we make, that investments that we make, the things that we do ought to be driven more by concerns about people who aren't here yet than by concerns about people who are. Why do we believe that? Because that's who God is. That's who God is. And if we would be the people of God, then we must be like him. Amen.